This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Pretty pitiful, but it was
okay. Because I was like, God, did I just clap so loud it like cancelled out AJ's clap?
I was here. Cool. Okay, well, hey, welcome everybody to the Cold Popture podcast. It's your hosts, they're here today. It's Richard and AJ.
Oh, I wasn't sure how that would end, but I think you definitely stuck the landing.
Oh, thank you, man. That's our new theme song. I will sing that at the start of every episode from now on. So welcome to the Cold Popture podcast. My name is AJ, and I'm joined as usual by Richard. It's just us two today, but we thought we'd do something because there's no fucking movies coming out.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot to talk about, so for the rest of the year, I think that...
Get ready for us just really scraping the bottom of the barrel content-wise.
So let's dive right into a slightly more esoteric, slightly more self-contained subject. And today we thought it'd be fun to discuss yours and my yours and mine? Yours and my.
Mine and yours.
Mine and yours.
Mine and your... Anyway, our
individual pop cultural Mount Rushmores. Now.
What do we mean by that?
We are well aware that 2020 is maybe not the best time to be making a Mount Rushmore allegory.
But here's what we mean by that. So we've got... essentially, there's 4 things, and that they're important. What we've got is, and we've been asking people. We've asked on our Discord, people to send some in. We've asked the other members of the Cold Popture family to send us theirs. But the idea is that you have a movie, a TV show, a song, an artist, or an album, and one wildcard category. And you pick one thing for each of those categories that isn't just like your favorite, but it feels foundational to the creation of you as a person. Or the development of you as a person, I should say.
Yeah, so it's a little, people and personalities and foundation of character is a malleable concept. And so it's maybe not a perfect approach, but just like Mount Rushmore doesn't really speak to the entire truth of America as a nation, this maybe will have some bits and pieces missing from it, though you and I have both tried to create a full picture of who we are as people with our selections.
So we won't just be, because there'll be a very short podcast, and this probably is still going to be a reasonably short podcast, but we're not just going to be like, okay, my movie is blank. Like, AJ and I have the benefit of being able to talk you through our selection process, talk about honorable mentions, and the process of like whittling it down to one choice, and why we maybe chose one thing over another.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of disagreement between the two of us over what should be the 4 pillars, and I guess we'll get to that as well. Or should we get to it now? So
let's go over the whole concept generally.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So we were like, okay, so initially it was just like what 4 pop cultural figures or things define you as a person, but then it felt like, well, they should be categorized. And I felt, especially for me anyway, I probably would accredit a video game more than a music thing as a foundation. And so I was like, it should be video game wildcard. But then you and a bunch of people in the Discord all disagreed with me and said that music is more foundational. And I guess it is. It's just, it's I'm not a very music-y person, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like I'm having to use up one on music when it doesn't feel integral to me as a character.
Yeah, I get that somewhat, but I think that if the idea is to put this idea of your pop cultural Mount Rushmore into the ether, I think music is going to resonate with more people, especially when you can just have video game as your wild card, because it feels like putting music into the wild card category feels too it feels too obvious. Like, where I feel more people are going to have to stretch for a video game than any kind of musical thing.
I reckon I would have done movie, TV show, video game, book. I reckon that's what I would have done.
Well, you could have done that.
Look, all of this is made up and nothing matters.
Yeah.
So, whatever. So yeah, we've explained everything now. Is there anything else need to be explained?
So, should we start off with movie?
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
my pop cultural Mount Rushmore, the movie on my Mount Rushmore. This is a hard thing to decide because, first of all, the content creator in me is like, AJ, no one wants to hear you talk about 28 Days Later again. Like, you've discussed all these things before. So I was like, okay, what really is the movie that I feel has influenced me the most? Or maybe not the most, but it feels like a key component in who I am. And what I ended up doing, somewhat accidentally, was I realized that the other three categories all like explained a certain corner of my personality, and I realized that the corner I had left, because I decided on movie last, the corner I had left that I didn't have any media to explain was my sense of humor. And I was like, okay, so what's a movie that defines my sense of humor? And I got very close to selecting Big Trouble.
Oh my god, I was hoping you would.
No, but I was like, I can't do it. And I got very close to selecting Back to the Future as well, which maybe is less about the comedy and more about the adventure of it. But I think written into the DNA of my sense of humor is the film The Road to El Dorado. I think that's my movie Mount Rushmore face. Because that movie, I've seen that movie so many times. I saw it so many times as a kid, and the main thing I remember feeling about it was that it was so funny, and it still is funny today, and has influenced.
Can you tell us a joke from it?
Yeah. There's a part where they are running away from the authorities, and they jump into barrels. And then a chest gets put on top of the barrel, and so they're stuck on them. And then as the barrels get loaded onto a ship, one of them's like, "What's going on?" And the other one goes, "We're both in barrels. That's the extent of my knowledge." And I always thought that was a really funny joke.
That's a very AJ joke. That feels fundamental to you as a person. Great choice.
It's also got that weird kind of like overtly sexual character in it, which maybe is like partially like my sexual awakening, and maybe that's also why it belongs here, with Chell and the scene in it that's very clearly a blowjob scene.
Yeah.
And
I'm surprised you didn't choose Spanglish as your movie.
Why are you going to bring this up? How did you remember that? Have we talked about this on the podcast?
We don't need to. I just remember you describing Spanglish as your sexual awakening one time.
Yeah. That's true.
Because it was Tia Leone?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't actually seen it, so I can't speak.
Maybe Spanglish is on my extended Mount Rushmore. So I would say it's Road to El Dorado. It's funny, it's action packed, it's got adventure, and I like the characters, and I've seen it a lot, and it influenced me as a person. What are your thoughts, and then what is your movie?
No, I like it. It's a cool choice. I think I've only seen it once. I don't remember it too well, but it obviously just didn't impact my life. No, yeah, I like that as a choice. It's cool. So my first choice. So similar kind of thing. Went through a few options. I was just trying to think of like movies that, because my sort of category, my way of thinking for the Mount Rushmore thing was like any piece of media that if you took it out, I wouldn't be the same person, you know? And so Toy Story is like the first movie I remember seeing, and but like when you're a kid, those kind of all blend together. So it doesn't feel like, even though it does stick out, it doesn't feel like it should for any particular reason in some ways, until like the sequels and stuff came out and it really cemented itself as like a franchise that I love. I remember Back to the Future as well. This was almost this is kind of, I'm tossing up between somewhat Back to the Future and another film. But Back to the Future was like, I was blown away by it, and it feels like it really cemented my love of film as a medium, and got me into film. However, I think my choice, and again, it's another thing, like you said, it's about the sense of humor of it, but I think I'm going to have to pick Hot Fuzz, because which isn't the most out of left field choice or anything like that, but while Back to the Future might have been the first film that made me realize I loved film, Hot Fuzz seems like the first film that I realized I love like filmmaking, and I love the idea of like the craft of film, not just watching them, but it's like I want to create these and I want to study these, and so I remember first time I watched it, I was staying at a friend's house, and I was always too scared to watch Shaun of the Dead because of the cover of it. But then, I hunted it down as soon as I watched Hot Fuzz. But yeah, Hot Fuzz will always hold a special place in my heart as kind of opening my eyes to what can be done with like film. Like, even though it's, it's not necessarily the most prestigious film, but it's every single syllable in that film is like there for a reason. Every single frame, everything that it fills that frame. It's such a precisely designed movie. And I think I maybe always associated that kind of level of like, I guess, auteur filmmaking with like Stanley Kubrick or Alfred Hitchcock. And it's like, oh, it has to be like a little bit, boring and pretentious, but it's like, no, you can actually have so much fun and make like a hilarious action movie, and it's still just as perfectly crafted.
Nice. That's a lot more in depth than what I said about Road to El Dorado, I think, and I feel like I should have said something better.
Well, now you know the level of talking I'm going to do, but and also like there's some of these pillars or these faces, we should say, I'm going to have more to say than others, and I guess Hot Fuzz is one of the ones I have more to say, or maybe it's not. Nice. Maybe that's the least I have to say.
So we asked the other members of the Popture family, the our sometimes hosts, as we sometimes call them. We asked them for their Mount Rushmore. So I thought we thought in between us going through our main categories, we'd tell you theirs. So we asked Jeremy, "Hey Jeremy, what is your pop cultural Mount Rushmore?" And he said his movie is The Count of Monte Cristo. His TV show is Arrested Development. His album is The Beautiful Letdown by Switchfoot. And his wildcard, which I thought was very cool, was the Sydney 2000 Olympic opening ceremony.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain why you laughed at his album?
Because Jeremy and I both hail from church circles, and it's just funny to me that
because Switchfoot are like a Christian band, right?
Yeah, but they're like the Christian band. So there's not a lot of like Christian bands that have cracked through to the mainstream, and Switchfoot is one of them. And I find them difficult to take
Reliant
seriously. Yeah, is it not Reliant?
I think it is Reliant. I always read it as Reliant though. There's a fun little AJ-ism of mine. But yeah, and Jeremy, he went on to explain as well that ceremony changed his imagination and what he expects from entertainment.
There you go. Very beautiful.
That's a really nice one. Do we want to grab one from the Discord?
Sure thing. The Discord is currently in tatters, with arguments going left and right in the same thread that I have to search for answers in. Oh my god. There's an argument. Join the Cult Popture Discord if you hadn't already. There'll be a link in the show notes. I highly recommend you join it so that you two can argue with us over whether or not Mary Kate and Ashley count as a franchise,
which they don't. The official ruling is that they don't.
That's our stance in Cult Popture, is that they don't count.
Oh my god, having to do so much scrolling.
Yeah, man. Oh my god. I'm still going up.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so let's start with Vincent Lara, who says his movie is Toy Story, his TV show is Avatar: The Last Airbender, his artist is Green Day, and his wildcard is Spider-Man 2. Vincent, that you sound like the coolest fucking dude. Those are some great. I wish those were the foundations of me as a character.
He says all these things are personal and great for me, and have shaped my taste in their respective mediums. It is funny, yeah, like using his wild card to get a second film.
I thought you could. Can you not do that?
No, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's just he's a sneaky boy.
We've also got one from Dan Connell, who said his movie is Heathers, his TV show is Better Call Saul, his artist is Spoon, and his wild card is Fire Emblem. And he says he watched Heathers as a teen, expecting it to be a high school chick flick. I don't know what that doesn't really explain why Heathers would be.
Like maybe it was a chick flick, and he was like,
yeah.
"Man, what a satisfying movie."
I've seen Heathers; it's not a chick flick.
I know.
All right,
but
TV.
yeah, it's interesting to me as well that like seeing because there's a couple other ones that you'll see, but putting like Better Call Saul, that like to have so recent that kind of like awakening or. I mean, it could just be that these people are choosing it based on what their favorite is. But anyway, should we move on to TV show?
In 2015, dude. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, so with the next face that we need to assign for ourselves is the TV show face. So, what TV show do we feel influenced us and created our interests? And I feel like I've explained the concept enough.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to go?
Okay.
Nice
so
back and forth.
This was an interesting one for me because I probably have more to answer what my favorite TV show is. Feels easier than answering what my favorite movie is for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily because I like TV more than movies or anything, but I guess TV feels like there are more definitive landmarks across my life.
Right, yeah.
Which whereas movies, it's like, oh, I like this and I like this and I like this, whereas I'm a lot more selective with TV.
Yeah, and I guess like TV almost feels inherently more like tied to a time period.
Yeah,
because
exactly,
it's like
man.
I remember sitting in the cinema silently and watching a movie when it came out, but I don't remember what was going on in my life so much around then. Where it's like a movie, a TV show. If you're watching it live, in the 2000s or whatever, you remember that 6 months of your life where you were watching it.
Yeah. And there are a few shows that I quickly ruled out for what will come to be obvious reasons.
Just shows you've never seen.
No show like the Good Place is a very recent show that I feel like was created for me. Like I love it so much, but it's absolutely not my Mount Rushmore because it's because of the Mount Rushmores in my life that I like it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's attractive to me because of who I've been built into
because
as a person.
You've already been, molded by other things.
Yeah, exactly. And so you go back further. I think one that nearly got in was Scrubs, just because it was such an emotionally resonant and also funny show for me. But with Road to El Dorado, I feel like I didn't need another comedy in place. Well, actually, in reverse order of that decision. That's more when I decided on Road to El Dorado, I was like, sweet, now I don't need to feel bad for excluding Scrubs. I think the obvious answer and the answer people would expect, or the answers people would either expect, would either be Breaking Bad or Lost, which are fundamental to who I am as a person. But I want to go back even further because the reason I was into Lost was because of an extremely forgotten drama from like 2002 or 2003, I think, called John Doe. That is my Mount Rushmore of television. John Doe was a drama about a man who woke up and he didn't remember who he was, but he knew the answer to every question. Like every his general knowledge was
Every
like
question.
off the charts. And he couldn't see colors. He could only see in black and white, and he would solve crimes with his friends, and it was a very, very mysterious show. There was, at the end of the first episode, he's like figuring out what he likes about, what he likes as a person, and he eats a spicy hot dog, and he's like, well, I guess I like spicy hot dogs, and that's like integral to discovering who I am, which feels like maybe you just never had one before. But as he's eating a spicy hot dog on Coney Island, he hears someone crying out, "Tommy! Tommy!" And he looks out, and on a boat, across the water is a woman waving at him, and he can see her in color, and she's saying, "Tommy! Tommy!" And that's where the first episode ended. And as you can see, like Lost was very much the same kind of thing, right? Like, sort of these insatiable mysteries that it leaves you with at the end of each episode. So it went for one season and ended on a motherfuck of a cliffhanger, tell you what. And I couldn't believe it. It was, and I don't know if I should spoil it, that I don't know if the show holds up or whatever, but
yeah.
I really love mysteries. I really love, as we discussed recently on the Popture podcast, like I really love the kind of ghostly, eerie, not knowing certain pieces of information, and then there'll be like this out of left field detail that makes you go like, what the fuck? How could that
what
possibly
the actual fuck?
And so John Doe, I think, is the earliest I can remember being something that I got very much into because of that.
Right.
So John Doe next to Road to El Dorado on my Mount Rushmore.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, so my TV show, I want to talk about all the honorable mentions because there's a very obvious answer. Like none of these are actually in the running. I just want to mention more than one TV show. So Scrubs, I had like very similar kind of experience with, like one of my favorite shows through high school. Very in line with my sense of humor, but I love the way it blends comedy and drama. I love when a show is able to do that. And it's probably because of Scrubs that BoJack Horseman became one of my favorite shows of all time.
Sure, yeah.
And because that does the same kind of thing of blending comedy and drama. And then, I mean, if I was looking at it like the way you kind of look at the Mount Rushmore experiment, if I wanted to show off like one part of my personality is my intelligence, I could have chosen Rick and Morty. That was a joke. But so, and other shows, and one that I was just thinking about in the shower before, that a show that actually feels, in spite of itself, feels important and integral to the person I am today is How I Met Your Mother. Because I've spoken about this a few times on the podcast, but I loved that show. That was my favorite sitcom for so long. It was like, it felt like it filled this hole that like having seen Friends too many times now like left, and that Scrubs left behind. And I fell in love with it, and like I picked up around season 3 or 4, and then like it was a brand new episode every like as soon as it came out. And then the final season was like, is objectively not very good. It has a couple of good episodes, but I couldn't I was refused to accept that it was going downhill, even though everyone hated it. And I was like, no, it's a good show. They're going to stick the landing. And then the finale is the most insulting, and I still to this day regard it as one of the worst pieces of media I've ever consumed, is the How I Met Your Mother finale. It's not only is it a bad episode of television, but it's a complete betrayal of 9 seasons of character development.
What's a like national or a famous monument that represents the opposite of Mount?
These are
Mount
the
Rushmore.
Confederate like things that people are begging to be taken down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mount Rushmore probably qualifies for both of these things.
But yeah, so and How I Met Your Mother, and it was this deep betrayal. I genuinely felt betrayed, and it's actually changed. It was subconsciously for a long time, but it's actually changed the way I watched TV shows. Like a show like BoJack Horseman that I just happened to be like, oh, it's got Will in it, cool. I'll chuck it on, and then ended up like falling in love with it and sticking with it. Through a somewhat bland couple of first episodes, but I don't really do that anymore. I don't just chuck on a show, especially a brand new show, because what if the ending fucking sucks, and so I don't mind watching a bad film because it's maximum a couple of hours long, but life's too short to invest in a bad TV show. And after watching How I Met Your Mother, you might not know a TV show is bad for 9 years. And I never watched Game of Thrones, but that's what happened. Like, How I Met Your Mother was my kind of like my version of that, of investing so deeply in this thing for so long. And now, because the general consensus seems to be that it's not worth starting Game of Thrones now because it's not.
Which is, oh my God, it's insane. Like, this is how I know exactly how you feel, is because I cannot, I mean, it's not like this show is obscure. Most people listening to this, I would imagine, have probably seen it. But like, if you never watched Game of Thrones and all you remember of it is that everyone hated the ending, I cannot understate how like revolutionary those first few seasons were. And so it really does feel like a betrayal. Like people are comparing it to like Rise of Skywalker and things like that.
Yeah.
In terms of what it's betrayed.
But like, something about like something at Rise of Skywalker doesn't. Well, I mean, okay, I've never been like the biggest Star Wars fan, but I could still probably enjoy episodes, the original trilogy just as much as I would, because there's something about film that doesn't feel quite as connected as a TV show. But yeah, that's just something that I thought of, that I was like, this is actually one of the most important TV shows, because I don't really watch TV that much anymore. Like a new Netflix show will come out and everyone's like, oh, did you watch it? And it's like, yeah, I'm never going to get around to it unless it finishes and it's universally agreed upon as being good the entire way. Having said all this, the obvious answer and the correct answer of what the TV show face on my Mount Rushmore is The Simpsons. It's obviously
right,
The Simpsons. It almost feels too important to just be a face. I described it to you the other day as being The Simpsons is the stone in which my Mount Rushmore is carved. Like you couldn't have anything on this mount if it wasn't for The Simpsons. Like I wouldn't exist.
The Simpsons is your Native American land, which was stolen by colonizers and used to celebrate other colonizers.
Exactly. I just, The Simpsons is so fundamental to me as a person. I know more about The Simpsons than probably anything else in the world. I know it's probably the only thing that I'm an expert in the sense that I've probably spent 10,000 hours watching The Simpsons.
Wow.
The whole, you have to do something for 10,000 hours to be an expert. I was bedridden sick a couple of weeks ago. Like literally Monday, Tuesday, couldn't get out of bed. Wednesday, I didn't have enough energy to get out of bed, but I couldn't fall asleep. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to put some Simpsons on the TV. And like 2 episodes in, I just felt fine. And I'd made a doctor's appointment and I got there and they're like, what seems to be the problem? And I'm like, well, nothing now. And yeah, The Simpsons cured me.
Wow.
I've got 2 Simpsons tattoos. I've got a Stonecutters tattoo and I've got on my arm the shape that Kirk Van Houten draws when they're playing Pictionary, and he draws the symbol for dignity. And it's just, I just think that's a really funny scene, and I think it's a funny symbol, and so I put it on my body for life. That's how much. The Simpsons is so fundamental to me as a person. And it feels like it's definitely out of the 4 heads. That's the most important one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, over in the Discord, you've got some common blood, because Mike in the Discord, one of our longtime listeners, Mike, he says that his movie is Ed Wood, and his show is also The Simpsons. He said his artist is David Bowie, and his wildcard is the X-Men comics. He says he should also fit Star Wars in there somewhere. Hard to pick one for just each category. Yeah, it is. It is hard.
It is. That's the point. And you don't get an hour-long podcast to discuss your reasoning, Mike.
Well, he does have a podcast though. That
yeah, true. And he could just feel free to take this idea, Mike.
But also Jess from the Popture family, and your partner, probably more importantly that, she says that Doctor Who is her, I guess, TV show.
Yeah. What else would it be?
Well, she hasn't listed. Well, she's just done it out of order. So Doctor Who's her TV show. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, I guess, is her movie.
Yeah.
David Bowie, like Mike, is also her musician.
So this isn't out of order, is it?
Well, no, she's put TV show first.
She is, isn't she?
Yeah.
Naughty.
And Del Toro Quest is her wild card, which is a book, which is very funny. That I never thought I'd discuss Del Toro Quest on the podcast before.
Jess loves Del Toro Quest, but she loved it growing up. And she also gives an honorable mention to Spyro Gateway to Glimmer, which is the second Spyro game. Funny little story. We have a PS2 at our house. It's just my old PS2 from when I grew up, and when moved up to Auckland, I think somehow the memory cards got lost in the shuffle, or I didn't have enough or whatever. But when Jess went to her home up north, she grabbed some of her old supplies, and there's a memory card that we have in the PS2 that says Emma and Jess for Spyro 2, that their mum had written on, now this is your Spyro 2 memory card. And so it's just it's just such a cute mum thing to do.
Yeah, love it. All right, so let's move on then to the third face on our pop cultural Mount Rushmores, which begrudgingly on my end is the musician / artist, song, album, what have you. And so the reason that I struggled with this one, this is a happy story in the end, but the reason I struggle with it is because it's not that I don't like music. I actually really like music. I just don't have time in my day where I actively listen to music or anything anymore. And I think because it's one of the only pieces of media that I don't actively understand because I understand storytelling, I understand filmmaking, and I understand elements of video games and stuff, and writing, I think because I don't understand how to make music, I'm less inclined to want to talk about it. And on top of that, this is Popture is a spoonerism of the pop culture, and while the Road to El Dorado and John Doe and all these other shows and movies we've talked about so far, they all feel like elements of pop culture. My music taste is pretty I'm not trying to sound hipster,
niche
but
culture.
it's sorry?
Niche culture?
Yeah, it's niche, so it doesn't feel like it's pop culture because my favorite band is not David Bowie or the Beatles or anything. It's a more obscure thing, which I'm not saying is cool. I'm not saying that makes me cool. It's just the truth. However, with all that being said, my favorite band is inarguably, probably more so than any other one of my Mount Rushmore faces, is who I am as a person. And so, with, surprising no one if you know me as a person or you've heard me talk about it before, but my musical Mount Rushmore is the band Me Without You, who I've been listening to since I was 13. I just got one of their vinyls in the mail the other day, and it's very, very, very cool. The area of my personality that Me Without You account for, I think, is a general love for writing. Their lyrics are breathtaking. I love Me Without You lyrics so much. I was just reading them aloud when I got the vinyl the other day because it came with a lyric book. And I love song lyrics. I love poetry. I love really good writing and really emotional writing, and also the fact that they're stylistically they're like alternative rock, which feels a lot more like I guess grassroots and rustic, as we used that term before. Was that on Generic Movie Podcast, which we recorded before this? I can't remember, but there's just something to them that like. I'm sure it's not a hard to grasp metaphor that like pop music is kind of like candy, right? You know what I mean? Like it's soda pop, right? I hope that makes sense. Whereas to me Without You feels like a roast meal. You know what I mean? Like a proper a dinner that is good for you.
Yeah. But I think people have that same kind of reaction to
absolutely. Sorry, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying my personal experience is like pop music creates like the soundtrack of my everyday life. Me Without You is a deeply personal experience for me listening to them.
He won't even let me listen to them.
Haven't I?
No, I said, I'm going to listen to some Me Without You, and you go, no, they're mine.
No, please, you should. They are breaking up this year. They're in the process of breaking up. It got delayed because they were going to do a farewell tour that got screwed over by COVID, which is a pretty funny reason for a band to not break up. Like, they didn't expect that was going to happen. And that's after 7 albums and I think about 20 years of working as a band. Yeah, man. They are the only piece of media in my Mount Rushmore that I would say is one of my like most important pieces of pop culture to me. The other ones feel more like they are responsible for creating me, but Me Without You is the only one that I'd be like, yeah, it's one of my favorite things in the world is Me Without You songs. If you are looking to get into them, if you want an album, I would recommend Brother Sister, which is their 3rd album. That's the first album I ever heard of them. And that's kind of they develop and change a lot over their 7 albums, but Brother Sister is kind of the every style they were before and ended up being kind of finding a happy middle ground.
Right.
So I'd recommend Brother Sister. And if you're looking for individual songs, their most famous songs would be something like January 1979, or The Fox, the Crow, and the Cookie, or let me think. Nice and Blue is a good one. In a Sweater Poorly Knit is the first song I ever heard from them, which I really love. My favourite song from them is called Carousels, and my favourite album is Catch for Us the Foxes, which is their 2nd album. And yeah, I love Me Without You. I still got to see them live a few years back. I think I talked about this on a Q&A episode we did at some point, but yeah, I went to Australia to see them play live and got to meet them, and it was very, 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 very cool. One of the coolest experiences of my life. And they tweeted about me the next day. They said, how cool is it that a gang of lads from New Zealand came out to see us? And it was like, oh my God, they know who I am.
Get them on the podcast, man.
Like, we shouldn't, because they're not, kind of in the wheelhouse of what this podcast is, but I don't think that'd be particularly hard to contact and ask to be on the podcast.
Yeah. Very cool. It's funny that the one that you begrudgingly put on is actually like your most important one.
That's what I mean. That's why it's a happy ending, because despite being like, oh, but I'm not really a musical guy, and I feel like video games feel more of a cult popture-y to mention, it's like, well, no, if we are talking who I am as a person, Me Without You is inarguably one of those elements,
Nice.
And also, I look like all of the members combined. So my haberdashery of personal style and personal fashion sense and
is that by design?
No, I didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't until I got selfies with them in Australia that I think Jeremy was actually like, "Oh my God, this is where it comes from," and I didn't realize that until then. And I was like, "Oh yeah, true."
So my music is probably like, I don't talk about it a lot on the podcast, I guess, but in a strange way, music is probably the most important pillar of pop culture to me, like more so than film, which you wouldn't necessarily guess by the fact that I have a film podcast. But like you, I don't. Uh, I can't create music. I'm not. I love singing. I sing all the time. But I can't play any instruments, and I love like watching music based video essays and on YouTube and like people explaining music, because I find it so fascinating, and the idea of like motifs and leitmotifs and all that is so fascinating to me. And it wasn't until I left high school that I would like really felt like film was my thing, and before that it was music, and it's still like I feel like my music taste kind of froze in high school, and it hasn't really developed a lot since then. So I don't as much outwardly talk about my music taste because it feels like, you know, it's very stunted. But there's a band that I have a little shrine to above my computer. Which, you know, features a signed poster, a set list that was folded up and given to me with a pick inside, and at a concert on their farewell tour, and that band is Yellowcard, and probably the most important band to me, like through high school. You guys, like, if you're listening to this, you might just know the song Ocean Avenue, which was kind of they're kind of considered a one-hit wonder of like the pop punk era. But yeah, Yellowcard, they were. I just really got into them and got the chance to see them live in 2015 when they came to New Zealand. Just played at like quite a small venue in West Auckland, and then again in 2017 they announced they were doing a final world tour. They were breaking up and they were playing in Australia, and I was like, okay, well this is important enough to me that I'm going to go over to Australia. And so I bought tickets to go see them in Brisbane, and then and with like a meet and greet, but then not long after that they announced that they were going to play Ocean Avenue, the album, in its entirety in Sydney the following day, or like 2 days later. So I was like, well fuck, I'm going to go to this as well. So I ended up, you know, seeing them twice in just over 48 hours, and you know, seeing one of my favorite albums of all time start to finish. It was incredible. But so I met the band before their Brisbane performance, and it was like you go in, you stand on a line, they're all standing there, you get a photo with them, you shake their hands, and you say hi, and then there was maybe 8 or 10 of us that got this like half-hour hangout before the show. So I sat next to the lead singer at this hangout, and he was just kind of a dick. Like he was very much like, yeah, I'm the celebrity. Like, he actually said, like, you guys have to talk to me. Like, you know, I'm not going to tell you what you want to talk about. Like, that you paid for this. Like, what do you want to talk about? Which was like, just made it really intimidating, because he's like, I'm not going to make an effort to talk to you unless you make the effort to talk to me. And so we talked about Star Wars a little bit. We talked about this new recording studio he was building. But he was very standoffish, and I was like, oh, maybe it's just nerves before the show. But when I was the first person to get my photo with them, when you go in and get the signings and stuff like that, and I went up and I shook all their hands, and then but the lead singer was holding a green tea, and I went to shake his hand, and he just shrugged. And then so I was like, okay, and I moved on and shook the hand of the violinist, because they were violinists. That's like kind of their thing.
If you knew them, you'd know it's their signature piece.
But then, yes, I had this half-hour hangout, and I mentioned that I came from New Zealand and stuff like that, and then the lead singer like just kind of trashed New Zealand a little bit. He said when they stayed there at the 2015 gig, he just said like they ended up changing hotels because the hotel was so shit, and so I just kind of said not a very good experience. But then as we were like finishing up this thing, this hangout, the violinist came over to me, and he was like, "Hey man, like I'm sorry I didn't really get a chance to talk to you." And he was like, and so this was like they were being ushered away. Everyone else had been taken away. The rest of the band had left, but he was like, "I just want to make sure that I get a chance to talk to you." And so we ended up chatting for a couple of minutes, and he was so lovely, like one of the loveliest people I've ever met. And I spoke to him about his experience in New Zealand, and I said, oh, you know, on behalf of the country, sorry. And he's like, oh, dude, like, it's obviously not your fault, and was so lovely. And then at the show, he's the one who picked up the set list off the stage because I was standing in front of him, and he folded it up, put a pick inside, and said, like, here. And then someone tried to grab it. He's like, no, it's for him. And so it was like just this amazing, like, nice thing. However, this is all to say, I don't feel comfortable putting Yellowcard on my Mount Rushmore anymore, because
much like Mount Rushmore, as we learn more about them, it becomes it feels like an unethical decision.
But so up until like even my issues with the lead singer aside, and he's gone on tour in solo, and he's kind of made a bit of a name for himself as being a bit of a dick. He's got a Star Wars podcast, and he's just started a Patreon. Neither of which I support at this point. But he so in December of last year, they announced that they were going to be suing the rapper Juice WRLD, because his song Lucid Dreams, which was a very popular song, supposedly copies the melody of their song Hollywood Died, which is the last song on their album Lights and Sounds, which was a follow-up to Ocean Avenue. Because so Lucid Dream goes, I take prescriptions to make me feel A-okay. And then Hollywood Died goes, rescuers working to clean up the crashes. So it's like, it is kind of similar, but it's not identical. And these like, oh, you copied our song things are so like, they always rule in favor of the sewer. The sewer. The person suing, not like the pipeline.
Not the famous pipeline. Richard, what's your pop cultural sewer?
But and so it's like it's just so petty, and the song already samples "Shape of My Heart" by Sting, so Sting already gets like 90% of the royalties of this song, and then Yellowcard like fuck you, we want the rest, and they sued for like some outrageous amount of money, and it's like. It's like lost profit, like not like the band Lost Profits. That's a whole different kettle of fish. That they're suing for, like, you know, saying that
and
people,
that's why Lost Profits is my musical Mount Rushmore.
They're suing for essentially saying that we lost money because people are listening to your song instead of our one, which is just bananas insane.
They're different genres,
but then a few, like literally like a week or two after I found out that this was happening, Juice WRLD passed away. Tragically, he was only 21. He was just a kid, you know. And then a few days later, Yellowcard were like, "This is a very hard time for us, but we're going ahead with the lawsuit." And it's like, what? You're just suing some kid's family for like for money, and it's like it's such a flimsy case anyway. And you know, you used to be the Ocean Avenue band, and you had all this goodwill from like pop punk fans, and now you've just destroyed that legacy. People look up Yellowcard and they're like, oh, they're the ones that sued that dead kid. And it's like, and so I can still enjoy their music because I'm kind of like a separate the art from the artist kind of person. I don't have to like think about, you know, all the horrible things that people have done while consuming their media necessarily, but it leaves a weird taste in my mouth now to talk about Yellowcard and to support them like that. So that was a very long-winded explanation of why this band no one cares about isn't on my Mount Rushmore, but it's an important story to me. But and I hope that you found it interesting. But this is all to say, I almost put the song Opportunity by Pete Murray, which is my favorite song of all time, Australian singer-songwriter, very, very good song. But I think probably the most important artist is a guy called Charlie Simpson. And so he's going in the musical slot in my Mount Rushmore. He was one of the three singers in the band Busted, which was a pop punk band in the 2000s, and we've spoken about that a few times on this podcast. That's how we know Charlie and Carlisle, who we had on Brave Little Toaster episode, because they write a podcast where they analyze Busted lyrics, and being New Zealand's biggest Busted fan, because I'm the only person that fucking likes them in this country, they've had me on a few times, but they so Charlie Simpson is kind of like, he's the cool one. He's got the deep voice. But then he left Busted and created this band called Fight Star, which is like a post kind of hardcore, like almost metal band. And then when he'd had done Fight Star for a few albums, he then released like 2 solo like folk albums, and then he got back together with Busted, and then they released this like electronic album, and so he's got the most beautiful voice, and I think, and it works across all these genres, and so it's like, you know, there's a song for any mood, and watching his kind of music evolve with me as a person, going from like, you know, cool, fun pop punk to then like, oh, I'm so angsty and hardcore, to then like mature kind of singer-songwriter kind of music, to then come back to like have a bit of fun. Yeah, that's why he's on there. And recommendations, if you want like to see what he did with Busted, there's obviously like What I Go to School For, Year 3000, like their signature songs. And then he left and made Fight Star, Floods, We Apologize for Nothing, Paint Your Target. And then his solo stuff, you've got anything on the album Young Pilgrim, probably my favorite album of all time. A song called Emily. And then from his return to Busted, you've got like Night Driver and On What You're On. So nice. Yeah, go check those out. Anyway, that was a very, very long explanation. I think I've been talking for like...
Maybe music is so attractive to us to talk about because of the mystique of not understanding how it works.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's so important. Well, hey, look, over on the Discord, Tim R. Tabor told us his pop cultural Mount Rushmore. He says his TV show is Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Great show.
His movie is Forrest Gump. His music is honestly not super informed on music as a medium. I rarely listen to music by itself. And his wild card is Sid Meier's Civilization 5.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. I'll read out a couple more. Craig says that his favorite TV show, the TV show on his Mount Rushmore, is Twin Peaks. His movie is Harold and Maude. His music is Radiohead. The album In Rainbows, and the song Reckoner, and miscellaneous is The Dog Ending from Silent Hill 2.
That's great. I love like, you know, choices like that. Because
you'll love Rowan from the Popture family. Rowan's Mount Rushmore, he said the movie is The Fellowship of the Ring, the TV show is Lost, the album is Divine Madness. Oh, no, the album is Divine by Madness, I think. Yeah. And his wild card is perplexingly Christianity, which he didn't really elaborate on. And I don't really know enough about Rowan to know what he meant by
he's also
that.
never really mentioned, like...
He said he thought about doing the Bible, which would be hilarious to have the Bible as your pop culture wild card. The Bible's probably my favorite piece of pop culture.
I mean, it's the highest selling book of all time, right?
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
We're down to the wild card now. So wild card can either be another one of what we've already talked about or a thing that has not been covered. And surprise, surprise, I've chosen a video game as my wild card. And again, I don't know if this is going to surprise anyone if you've been listening for a while. Although I do have a few video games that maybe you
will be surprised.
Maybe you will be surprised. My video game Mount Rushmore is the Oddworld series. I thought about this. I thought Last of Us, while Last of Us and Last of Us 2 are like all I think about at the moment. Like, again, that it feels like I'm into The Last of Us because of John Doe and these other areas of life that I've been fascinated. It's similar to what I said about The Good Place. It's because of who I am that I like The Last of Us, and not it wasn't the first or the origin or the inception of this part of me. And I also thought about Crash Bandicoot, because Crash Bandicoot was what I was obsessed with when I was a kid, and Jack and Daxter as well. But I don't think I like Crash Bandicoot because of something about me. I think Crash Bandicoot is just a very attractive thing. It's a cartoon that appeals to little kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it speaks to who I am as a person, but Oddworld is that, left of center pick for me, which it's not entirely obscure, but the fact that
just to elaborate, kind of like Crash Bandicoot is saying you and I both love, we both love Spyro, both love Last of Us. I have no interest in Oddworld.
There you go.
Like Oddworld is such a you thing that To me, it just doesn't look fun.
Well, it is. It's very fun. It's very fun, Richard. Shut up. And I think even though I more actively pursued Crash Bandicoot as a kid, I remember playing Oddworld as a kid, and because like the third and fourth game were on Xbox, which I never had, it was always this way more like mysterious and like enigmatic kind of series. The first two games, Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus, I think are some of the most that they are responsible for the indie games industry.
Yeah, for sure.
We've both played the game Inside recently, which is a side scroller. Any side scroller in the industry, especially the ones that are about like something sort of dark.
Well, when it's all about like world building, but they don't show you everything. Yeah,
exactly. They would not even fucking exist in any form if it wasn't for Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus. I think the area specifically of my life that Oddworld is responsible for nurturing would be like my interest in creepiness and grossness and kind of like I remember when I was a kid, I always used to try. I drew quite a lot. I did a lot of drawings as a kid, and I would always find it real hard to draw realistic looking people because when you draw realistic looking people, it looks quite ugly. And Oddworld was like the piece of media in my life that was like, it's actually okay if they look ugly. Like aesthetically displeasing things are aesthetically pleasing for a different reason. And so I think it did that for me. It's such a gross series. It's such a creepy series, and there's also a lot in there politically, which now informs who I am, because the games are about like freeing subjugated
the working class,
exactly, and so. It's also like very puzzly. There's a lot of puzzles, and some really interesting gameplay where you like talk to characters, and that's how you kind of maneuver your way through the game. And I have a very cherished memory of mine, Richard, was when I would have been maybe 8 or so, and I went to my cousin's house, and they had Oddworld on PS1. They had the first one, and I remember it was maybe like 10 o'clock at night, and I was there with my family, and I was just in the TV room while the rest of the family were like chatting, and my dad came into the TV room and we put on Oddworld, and we just played it into the night. It must have been earlier than 10, but it felt like it was real late. And like we got to the end of the second level and the game paused, and like whenever I would later go round to my cousin's house, it was famous that you could only get that far in the game before the scratches on the disc fucked it up too much. But like that's just a cherished memory. It's I don't know what I mean by this, but there are certain games that are made better by playing them real late at night, and I don't exactly know what that is, but Oddworld is like the prime example of that. It's like you're up so late and you're playing something dark and creepy and weird but strangely addictive, and as you say, the world building it is great. It's just responsible for so many of my interests.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that you never had an Xbox. Have you played 3 and 4?
Yes, so they released... we got an Xbox 360 at some point, but I couldn't actually play them on there because Munch's Odyssey, which is the third game, was one... It was an Xbox launch title, so like early Xbox games are real finicky on Xbox 360s, and so I could play it, but the audio was drowned out, which maybe wouldn't be that big of an issue, but audio is such a like... fucking important component of Oddworld because you've got to talk to people, and then I think it ended up getting released on PC, both
on Steam.
both Munch's Odyssey and Stranger's Wrath. So I think I must have played them both on PC, which is weird to think of. But maybe I played them on PS3. I can't remember, but I have played the last two.
Yeah, they did end up getting ported to PS3 by the looks of it.
Right. So I have played them, and then of course I played the remake. And there's a sadness to Oddworld because I think they've lost their touch. I didn't think the Abe's Odyssey remake was particularly good, and Munch's Odyssey was at its best unfinished, and Stranger's Wrath, while cool, was like a completely different story. So, you know, I just missed the characters that I played the first 3 games with. And they've got a new game coming out, which is a remake of Exodus. Well, sort of a remake, like a reimagining of Exodus, because they've added a bunch of stuff in it, called Soulstorm, which I will play, and I will probably enjoy at the time, but I can't imagine it being anywhere near as good as that original Exodus. In my opinion, they shouldn't have remade the games. They shouldn't have overwritten them in canon. They should have just made sequels.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
So, Richard, I am dying to know, what is your video game? No, your wild
Oh,
card.
it doesn't have to be a video game, mate.
Ah, great.
I do just want to just add, I have just Googled, and in the last couple of weeks, Yellow Card have said they're resuming there now, because obviously it was put on hold, the lawsuit. Their $15 million lawsuit, because they think they lost $15 million because he stole their song. And they say, he definitely knew it because his favourite album is From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy, and we had the same producer, so he obviously heard our album, which makes no sense. Anyway,
do you think the violinist is like, guys, we shouldn't be doing this? And the lead singer's like, no, we had to.
I actually think he might be, because looking at the Instagrams and stuff, they don't interact with Sean, he's the violinist, that much anymore. And I think he may have been dragged into actually having to represent them somewhat in the lawsuit, but I think there's been some kind of falling out there because he's the nice one. Anyway, so my miscellaneous. It's interesting because obviously, we talked about video games, and we did at one point talk about, let's just compromise and not have miscellaneous, and you just have to have a music and a video game. And, if I'd done that, video games were interesting for me growing up because I've always gotten each console so late, so it's I only got Crash Bandicoot after knowing it, everyone had moved on from it, kind of thing. But Crash Bandicoot and Spyro are the ones that really feel instrumental to me growing up, and they're kind of the only ones that feel like that. But for my wild card, there was kind of only one option for me, because it's a thing that feels so integral to my development, and it's even though it was this popular thing, it's like You With Me Without You. That's obviously they have other fans, but it feels so personal. But there was this web series, and it's technically still going, but very rarely, called Homestar Runner. It was a flash animation that it was created by the brothers Chaps, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I've never seen it. I've never seen Homestar Runner.
It's interesting, because it feels like one of those things that, when our friendship was blossoming, there were so many things like this that you were the only other person I had to talk to about them.
Yeah, like the that video we both saw in the early days of the internet of the green alien singing "I Will Survive."
Oh my god! Screw Homestar Runner. That's my wild card. No, Homestar. So it was kind of the most popular thing of it was this character called Strongbad, who was this guy wearing a Mexican wrestler mask who would answer his emails, Strongbad emails, and that was kind of many people's sort of first kind of toe dipping into the world. But it was this rich kind of world with all of these characters, and it's one of those things that I don't know how to recommend it to people because I don't remember how I got started in it. It's one of those things that as far back as I can remember, I've always known Homestar Runner. I've always been into it. But it feels like one of those things that so distinctly shaped my sense of humor and what I'm into, because it has a very unique, absurd sense of humor. And I would say the development of my sense of humor is entirely due to The Simpsons, Homestar Runner, and SpongeBob SquarePants, but obviously I could only choose one TV show for the TV show pillar. But I think SpongeBob SquarePants doesn't get enough credit for designing the sense of humor of millennials.
I think SpongeBob is just The Simpsons continued.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it's a more child friendly. It's the sense of humor is almost exactly the same as The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's very similar, but yeah, it's that weird kind of absurdist humor that I think our memes wouldn't exist without
100%
without SpongeBob. But yeah, Homestar Runner, it does have a few famous fans. Lin-Manuel Miranda will tweet references to it every now and then. I remember there was an old video of Katy Perry and Hayley Williams from Paramore. Katy Perry or one of them posted a photo of the two of them as like, oh, we're just discussing like where is Homestar gone? Because they went on hiatus for like a decade, and just in the last couple of years have started uploading a couple of videos a year, kind of thing.
Hey, well, you know what else Hayley Williams is a fan of?
What's that?
Me Without You.
Is she?
Yeah, she's features on some of the songs. She features on a song called Fox's Dream on the Log Flume, but she is doing what could be best described as backing vocals, so it's not really like...
Yeah.
You wouldn't listen to it because you really like Hayley Williams. Yeah. Mary Elizabeth Winstead also really likes Me Without You.
Cool.
And she's MEW, which is the first three letters of Me Without You, which is one word, which is why that's...
Yeah. Yeah, so Homestar Runner, please comment if you were into it. Because I would love to, or like anyone on the Discord that wants to talk about Homestar Runner, I would love to, because, oh my god, like I think in my life, other than people that I knew at the time growing to like my sister and my cousins or whatever, I've met two people that were into it growing up and that I've been able to like talk to about it. One I went to broadcasting school with and one I work with at the moment.
So... I am so, like, I vaguely know what it looks like. When you said it, I was actually picturing a different thing, and then when you said it's the guy in the wrestling mask, I was like, oh, that one, right. But the only thing even close to Homestar Runner that I'd seen was, do you remember, very cringy by today's standards, but in the mid-2000s, there was a pre-YouTube web series called Pure Ownage, which is about like a professional gamer, very popular with the tech crew at my high school.
I have not seen that.
You'd watch it now and you'd be like, this is the most arrogant, self-righteous gaming cliche. But they would do like parodies of certain things, and one of the episodes had a parody of Strong Bad's email section in it, where it was like the main character who wore a bandana was like his signature piece, and he would be typing replies to email, and it'd be filmed in that same like low angle shot of the back of his head with the computer high up. That I presume is part of Strong Bad, because someone told me it was a reference to Strong Bad.
The title Homestar Runner refers to a character named Homestar Runner who's like he's white in the sense that he's like actually the color white, he's not just Caucasian, and he's got long legs, a red kind of torso with a star on it, and a massive underbite. Oh, sorry, it's my mic. And a massive underbite.
That's who I was thinking of. Yeah. Okay, no,
yeah, he's the Homestar Runner, and there's actually an episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends where Blue. They open the door a bunch of times and it's Blue changing, and one of them he's Homestar Runner. Anyway, but he doesn't have any arms. He has like invisible arms, and I went to this like fudge cottage workshop thing. They do like fun things for kids in the school holidays, and I went to this, and I would have been like 13 kind of thing, but it was clearly aimed at like 10-year-olds, you know? And when you're 13, there's quite a big age difference between you and 10-year-olds. And I went and I made this like beautiful Homestar Runner out of fudge, and it was like colored with all different candies and whatnot. And I showed and the woman came over and was like, oh, that's very cool. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, where are his arms? And I was like, and I said, they're invisible, because that's actually in canon. That's what his arms are. But God, like the oldest kid at this fucking thing drawing this little character going, where are his arms? And he goes, oh, they're invisible. It's like, oh my God, I must have sounded so stupid and weird. And then she was like, oh, cool. And then just moved on to the next kid who was like, you know, had just thrown all their fudge on the fucking mat and been like, oh, yeah, I made it. It's a kiwi. And they're like, wow, that's so good.
Very cool. Wow.
I was like,
they're invisible. Wow.
So, yeah, that's my fourth face.
Nice. Wow, we the only member of the Popture family currently left to let us know is Emily, who I've been messaging all through this, being like, please tell me your pop cultural Rushmore. She has not replied, so I'm going to make it up for her. Her movie will be the Barney the dinosaur movie about the magic egg. Her TV show will be
the Game of Thrones finale.
the Real Housewives of Auckland. Her music will be Lost Prophets. And her miscellaneous will be like a tower insurance ad. So there you go.
Oh, the Goldstein ads.
I'll see if there's any more in the Discord that we can.
Yeah, we've got
about.
Ryan/Gas Cadet. His movie is Back to the Future. TV show is I Think You Should Leave. Song is Got Well Soon. And Wildcard is Left 4 Dead 2/Halo 2. Got to pick one, Ryan.
See, Ryan. It's Halo 2, dude. Halo 2 has got to be infinitely more complex than Left 4 Dead 2.
No,
surely
but
that's your answer, bro.
The other day, someone was doing a Twitch stream of Left 4 Dead 2, and Ryan said, "I love Left 4 Dead 2."
But I've heard him talk about Halo 2 as well. I just feel like I don't like what you like, and I'm not saying don't like Left 4 Dead 2, but
I'm not
surely
saying
Halo
don't like what you like.
Halo 2 surely earns the place over Left 4 Dead 2, Ryan. Come on, mate. Come on.
And then Alan Smithy, the famous director. TV show Doctor Who, both classic and new. Movie is Spider-Man 2, Love Me Some Toby Moby. Music, Oingo Boingo, Shine On You Crazy Elfman You. If you don't know that's a reference to AJ, Oingo Boingo is Danny Elfman's band. And Wildcard is superhero comics in general, though he's more of a DC fan. I like comics as a wildcard. It's quite a good one because that's one that feels like it's could easily be fundamental to someone, but it's not something I grew up with.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a few more. Yep.
Brent from Texas says his TV show Mount Rushmore is House. Why does everyone doing TV show first? He says specifically, especially the 2-part episode where he gets in the bus crash.
Great episode.
Spoilers. His movie is Twister. God, okay. His music is Pedro the Lion, and his miscellaneous is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Then he said Twister might be replaced by Titanic. So you got to pick one. Jensen's his TV show is Survivor. His movie is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. His music is Rise Against, and his wildcard is Halo.
I think Survivor's a cool answer.
Yeah,
like I know people that are like fundamentally grew up with Survivor.
All right, okay.
I used to love Survivor.
Spoodle Goop, he says his movie is Jurassic Park. His TV show is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. His music is Lisa, and his wildcard is Persona 3. So there we go. That's all the ones from the Discord. Let us know if you're in the Discord or if you're commenting on this anywhere else what your pop cultural Mount Rushmore is. Do you have any final thoughts? Is there anything that you wished could have made the cut but didn't?
Oh. No, I feel good actually.
Yeah?
I feel like,
That's
I
good.
explained all my reasonings pretty good. But yeah.
I was very tempted at one point to do a book called The 11th Hour as my miscellaneous, but it created the same part of me that John Doe created. So I was like, well,
Right.
don't need it. But maybe I'll talk about The 11th Hour on another podcast because I have been thinking about that book a lot recently and am probably going to track it down and buy it. Cool. Another good one for that would be Holes. The book Holes is
man.
that same kind of lost John Doe mystery kind of element that I love.
Yeah. Old Stanley now, Yelnats.
Old Stanley Yelnats.
Oh yeah, but like, please comment your pop culture Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear them. I think it's a fun exercise where you're talking about not just your favorite, but fundamental to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think it says a lot about a person, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's boring to talk about what your favorite thing is. It's way more important to talk about how something made you.
Most important thing, yeah. I'd love to see what other people have for their wild cards as well.
Yeah. The pop culture that made us is a new Netflix series they should.
Oh yeah, true. All right.
Well, hey, thank you very much for listening, guys. Make sure you like Cult Popture on all the places and follow it or subscribe to it on wherever, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. You can support us at patreon.com/cultpopture, where right now, during this podcast, people have been suggesting and voting on what the next franchise after Fright Night will be, so that's pretty exciting. And also join the Discord, as we've been saying. The Discord is the place to be. Love the Discord, even when they try to convince us that Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen is a franchise, when we've repeatedly said before, the official Cult Popture stance is that it's not a franchise. Alright everybody, thank you for listening, and sorry for making an extended Mount Rushmore metaphor in a tumultuous time for that monument, but there's just no other perfectly succinct way to describe what we're meaning, I guess.
Yeah.
A real Mount Rushmore, real pop cultural Mount Rushmore would be 4 pieces of media which we think defines us, but it's actually something completely different that we can't acknowledge.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Welcome along, everybody, to our post-credits scene. This is a segment of the show brought to you by our patrons over at patreon.com/cultpopture, where if you donate $5 or more per month, then you get to give us a little topic of discussion. Richard, are you excited to dive right into our post-credit scene for this episode?
Yes.
All right, well, this one comes to us from Christopher Brown, who asks, what film score gives you legit chills? So, I quite like film scores, but I often find them very difficult to remember which ones I do like and which ones I can't remember and which ones haven't stayed with me.
outside of the super iconic ones.
Yeah. So if I'll try to go a touch obscure. I'd say 2 film scores that give me legit chills. Would be one would be the score for Signs, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which sounds like a mix between Psycho and like Edward Scissorhands almost. It's a very striking, very unforgivingly scary tune, and it starts with it. It starts with like sort of slowly building into it, and then as the title pops up, it goes "dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun," and it's very scary. I'd recommend listening to it if you haven't heard it before, because I think it's one of the most effective parts about that film, which is somewhat divisive. Have you seen Signs?
No, we've gone over this several times.
You should see.
There was one time,
now
it was like, I was a school night, and by which I mean I had work the next day, and it was like midnight, or like slightly after, and you're like, bro, let's watch Signs right now. You're like, bro, it's only like 2.5 hours long. Like, it'll be sweet.
It's not that long.
Yeah, I remember you telling me it was like over 2 hours long, and I was like, are you fucking insane? I'm going to bed. Like, why would I
say? I've never thought it was in my life.
I was getting up to go to bed, and you were like, let's watch Signs. And I was like, read the room.
And because of that minor transgression, you've refused to watch it for the rest of your life. It's now that you're more of a fan of horror movies because of this podcast, I think you would enjoy Signs particularly.
That was never the reason. It was because it was like fucking almost 1 a.m. and
All
it was a school night.
Well, next time you're in town, we'll make a strawberry pie and we'll watch Signs. Another film score that gives me legit chills is the film score for Casper, the Friendly Ghost, the movie, which is just called Casper. Not Casper the Friendly Ghost. Have you seen Casper?
Years ago. What was the sequel to it?
There's like Casper's a scary beginning or something.
I know.
Like
I've definitely seen the sequel, but
there's Casper Meets Wendy as well, but none of the sequels are technically the same continuity, I don't think, as that original movie. But anyway, that original movie, I don't think it's particularly good. I actually think it's actually really amateur in some places. But the score to it remains the most effective part of the film. especially when during the scene, it's like Casper's theme when he's like asking Christina Ricci, "Can I keep you?" Or when he talks about how he remembers dying of like pneumonia. The tune of the score to those two scenes is very haunting, and I wish the rest of the film was as good as the theme tune. It deserved, like, the Casper theme tune deserves like a
An Oscar.
like a mainstay in pop cultural conversation status, but it's really not a good movie.
Yeah.
Do you have any film scores you'd like to share?
It's not a film score, but for a video game, the Lego Marvel Superheroes.
Oh, yeah, man. Have we talked about this before in a post-credit scene?
I think we might have.
Yeah.
But just to reiterate, Lego Marvel Superheroes. If you like the Lego games, this is the best one. It's like an open world kind of. I mean, it has the levels and stuff like that, but a large portion of it is open world, and so you're just exploring a Lego version of New York City, as all of your favorite Avengers and X-Men, because they're both in this game. But
it's probably the biggest piece of media, interactive media, not even like non-comic book media that has. That has both the X-Men and the Marvel
and Fantastic Four, and it's like because it's very heavily MCU influenced. The soundtrack to it though, when you're just like exploring, is like the most beautiful kind of like idol music. It sounds like it's like
idols are
It's the same kind of music you get in like The Last of Us when you're exploring kind of, and you're just having a conversation, and it's very serene.
I'm gonna listen to it as soon as we stop recording today. It's a very relaxing. It's like kind of a profound. Yeah, idol is a good word to use, but that doesn't make it any less kind of. It's almost a nostalgic, sorrowful.
Yeah,
kind of chick.
It's so funny, and it's like while you're like flying around as Iron Man,
as a Lego Iron Man.
Yeah. Or slowly descending to the ground as Iceman. Because you like how Frozone does, like creates an ice path in front of him. If you can get up real high and then like as Iron Man, then switch to Iceman, you can just like very, very slowly descend to the ground on one of those ice paths.